Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to deep dive into a topic one of our listeners flagged, and it's really fascinating. It's this idea of the Matthew effect in relationships.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that whole the rich get richer thing.
Right.
But instead of money, we're talking about effort in love and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people can relate to this. Like, have you ever felt like the more you put into a relationship,
Yeah.
the less it's actually appreciated?
Absolutely.
So that's the puzzle we're going to try to unpack today.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is that the listener sent over a bunch of stuff for us to look at.
Uh-huh.
There are some articles, some like more expert opinions, and then some more personal reflections too.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a really good mix.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating, because this is one of those topics that really bridges like individual psychology,
Yeah.
but then also societal norms.
Totally.
Especially because, looking at the sources, it's a blend of Western and Chinese perspectives. So we're going to explore kind of why this happens, what it looks like, and most importantly, what we can do about it.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you actually used the term Matthew effect in your notes to us.
Right.
And I'm really curious to dig into how that dynamic is showing up in your own relationships. It's essentially that feeling that the more you invest,
Yeah.
whether it's time, energy, your emotions,
Right.
the less valued you actually feel. And it's not about keeping score, right?
Right. Absolutely not.
It's not like a tit for tat thing. It's more about recognizing a pattern
Yeah.
that can really lead to some serious hurt feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the sources you sent is a Chinese article. It used this really powerful phrase, and I want to get your take on this.
Okay.
The phrase was, "Well, to tu han, a tu."
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really powerful one. It basically translates to like the more one invests, the less cherished they become.
Whoa.
And I think that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about here.
It's so true, right?
Yeah. And it speaks to this kind of cultural value that's often emphasized in a lot of Chinese relationships, which is this idea of reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
Yeah, that things should be balanced. When one person is consistently putting in more effort, it disrupts that balance and can really lead to resentment.
Yeah, it's not even just about fairness at that point. It's about feeling seen and appreciated by the other person.
Exactly.
So, okay, so how does this imbalance even start? Like, where does this come from?
Well, a few of the sources you sent brought up attachment theory.
Attachment theory, yeah.
Maybe we could start there.
Okay, so break that down for us a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So think of your relationship style as kind of like a dance, right?
Okay.
Some people, they cling really tightly, wanting constant reassurance. And then others, they need a little more space, a little more independence.
Right.
And so that's kind of attachment in a nutshell,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's how comfortable we are with closeness and intimacy.
So if I'm understanding this right, our dance, so to speak, can actually make the problem worse.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like the more you try to close the gap, the further away your partner might pull back.
Right, exactly. Somebody with an anxious attachment style, they might overgive to try to feel more secure, always seeking validation.
Oh, that makes sense.
Whereas someone who's more avoidant, they might pull back when things feel too intense. And then that, of course, makes their partner try even harder.
So it's like this
It's this push and pull.
vicious cycle almost.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of ways.
That's so frustrating.
It is, it is.
And what's interesting too is I notice a few sources mention that this overgiving thing sometimes might stem from like a deeper place,
Yeah.
like this need to be needed.
That's huge, yeah.
It's almost like it's not even really about the other person at that point.
Right, sometimes it's more about us and our own history, right?
Right.
Maybe we learn to seek validation through effort, maybe from not getting enough attention as kids, things like that.
Yeah, so it's like we learn to earn love through effort instead of just being ourselves.
Yeah, and that makes me think about the idea of self-efficacy, which a couple of the sources brought up.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so self-efficacy is basically our belief in our own ability to, succeed and impact the world.
Right.
And if we don't have that, if we lack that confidence in our own worth, we might try to find it externally through constantly giving and doing for others.
So we're putting our worth in someone else's hands, essentially,
Exactly.
instead of recognizing our own inherent worth.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think, too, about societal expectations, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Like traditional gender roles can play into this in a big way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
One source was talking about how men are often raised to be very stoic,
Yeah.
not to show weakness, not to ask for help.
Right.
And then women are often expected to be the caregivers, the nurturers.
Yeah, always giving the...
Yeah, always giving, which can make it really difficult for them to set boundaries or even just ask for what they need.
Right, because it's like this unspoken pressure.
Mm.
It's like we're all playing roles in a play that we didn't even write, you know?
Totally, yeah. And it's not about blaming anyone, but it's just recognizing how those societal norms can contribute to this imbalance, you know?
So we've got this combo of our own personal psychology, our relationship patterns, and then these bigger societal pressures that are all kind of feeding into this Matthew effect.
That's a great way to put it. It's complex, but I think the good news is it's not a life sentence.
Okay, good.
It's something we can work on and shift those dynamics.
So where do we even begin? I'm guessing the first step is understanding ourselves better.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a fantastic starting point. It's about taking a really good, honest look at your needs and motivations in your relationship. You know, are you giving from a place of genuine love and desire? Or are you being driven by fear or insecurity or even a need to control?
That's a really powerful question.
It is. It is. And I bet a lot of our listeners are pausing the episode right now to really contemplate that.
Totally.
It's not always easy to face those deeper motivations, but it's so, so crucial.
Okay, so once we have a little bit better handle on that, what comes next?
Well, then you can move to the next stage, which is communicating those needs effectively.
Communicating them.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that's what we're going to dive into after this break.
Perfect.
Okay, so we've spent some time on that self-reflection.
Yeah.
Kind of figuring out what's driving us in our relationships.
Right.
But then how do we actually talk about this stuff?
Right.
Because I feel like it can be so awkward, you know? Especially if you're not used to, like, bringing up these deeper issues.
Yeah, totally. And actually, one of your sources suggested, like, framing these conversations as an opportunity to, like, deepen the connection.
Oh, I like
Instead of it being like a confrontation, it's like an invitation to understand each other.
It's like building intimacy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of like tearing it down.
Exactly. And I think choosing the right time and place is also really important.
Right. So don't bring this up when you're like rushing out the door.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Find a time when you're both relaxed, you know, no distractions.
Right.
Feeling open.
Okay. So we've set the scene. But then what do you actually say?
Right. Well, I think going back to what we talked about with the self-awareness piece.
Yeah.
You know, starting by really expressing your own needs and motivations using I statements.
I statements, yeah.
So, for example, instead of saying, you know, you never make me feel appreciated.
Right.
You might say something like, I feel a little hurt when my efforts go unnoticed.
Right. So it's less about accusing and more about
expressing your own vulnerability.
Expressing your own vulnerability.
Yeah. And remember, communication is a two-way street. So it's not just about expressing your needs.
Yeah.
It's also about actively listening to your partner's perspective.
Put on those empathy ears.
Exactly. Even if you don't agree with everything they're saying.
Yeah. Which can be hard.
It can be hard, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's so worth the effort.
Yeah.
Because when both partners feel heard and understood,
right,
it creates that foundation of trust and respect, which is really essential for any healthy relationship.
And sometimes that understanding can lead to compromise, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's about finding solutions that work for both people.
Exactly. It's about teamwork.
Yeah.
Not control.
It's about partnership.
Exactly.
And speaking of partnership, a few sources talked about like shared values and goals.
Right.
And how that can actually be really helpful in breaking this Matthew effect cycle. How so?
Well, you know, when you're both on the same page about the big things in life, like your vision for the future, core values,
right,
it makes it so much easier to navigate all those day-to-day challenges.
Right, because if you're not even aligned on the big picture,
exactly,
how are you going to align on the little things?
Right, and it's not about having the exact same goals, but it's about finding ways to like support each other's dreams while also building a shared vision.
And that makes total sense, because what if like one person wants to travel the world and the other wants to settle down and have kids?
Right.
Like, how do you even make that work without one person sacrificing everything?
It takes creativity. It takes compromise.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe they travel for a year and then settle down.
Yeah.
Or they find a way to like incorporate travel into family life. The possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
It's really about that open communication, the flexibility,
right,
that commitment to finding solutions that work for both of you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm feeling more hopeful already. So we've talked about a lot today.
We have.
What are the big takeaways you want listeners to walk away with?
I think, first and foremost, the Matthew effect is not a life sentence.
Okay, good.
It's a challenge that we can overcome with awareness and effort.
Yeah.
So starting by understanding, like, the root of the imbalance, right?
Right.
Is it you? Is it your partner? Is it a combination of both? And then communicating your needs clearly, setting those boundaries, and working together to create that shared vision for the future.
You've given us so much to think about.
I hope so.
What's one small step listeners can take today to start shifting the balance in their relationships?
That's a great question for everyone to ponder.
Yeah.
Change doesn't happen overnight. It's a process.
Right.
It starts with that first step, which can often be the most courageous.
Yeah.
Maybe it's initiating a conversation. Maybe it's setting a small boundary, or maybe it's just taking some time for yourself.
Yeah, for your own needs.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, folks, that's our deep dive into the Matthew effect.
Yeah.
This was a complex one, but I'm walking away feeling empowered, honestly.
I am too.
It's not easy work, but we can absolutely shift these dynamics with awareness, with effort, and a whole lot of self-love.
I agree.
And remember, you're not alone in this journey.
You're not.
There are resources available, whether it's therapists, books, support groups, to help you build stronger and healthier relationships.
Absolutely.
So keep exploring these ideas, keep communicating.
Yes.
And remember, love has the power to transform not just your relationships, but your whole life.
That's true.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive. Until then, may your relationships be filled with balance, joy, and a whole lot of mutual appreciation.
Sound good.
So we've talked about personal growth and communication, but what can couples actually do to shift that dynamic?
Right.
Some of your sources highlighted, like the importance of setting clear boundaries.
Yeah, boundaries are huge.
Yeah.
Especially if you tend to, overgive or people please. It's learning to say no and protect your own well-being.
Okay, so how do you even start with that?
Well, I think a good place to begin is by identifying, your non-negotiables.
Non-negotiables.
Yeah, the things you absolutely will not compromise on.
Like deal breakers almost?
Yeah, exactly. For example, if honesty is, super important to you, that's a boundary around, lying or deception. If you need your space,
Right.
you set limits on, uninvited guests or those late night calls.
So it's about knowing what really matters to you and then actually voicing those needs. But what if your partner, pushes back or just doesn't get it?
Well, that's where assertive communication comes in.
Okay.
Stating your boundary clearly and calmly without getting defensive or apologetic.
Right.
And it's okay if it feels a little uncomfortable at first.
Yeah, I bet.
It definitely gets easier with practice.
And if your partner respects you, they'll respect your boundaries.
Exactly. And if they don't, honestly, that's a red flag.
Good point.
Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and a willingness to support each other's needs.
It's about teamwork.
Exactly, not control.
And speaking of teamwork, a few sources also emphasize shared values and goals.
Yes.
How does that play into breaking this Matthew effect cycle?
Well, it's so important when you and your partner are on the same page about those big things in life, like your vision for the future, core values. It just makes navigating those day-to-day challenges so much smoother.
That makes sense.
And again, it's not about having identical goals,
Right.
but it's about finding ways to support each other's dreams while also building that shared vision for your life together.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And, it makes me think, what if one person wants to travel the world and the other person wants to settle down and have kids?
Right.
How do you even make that work?
It takes creativity.
Yeah.
It takes compromise, right?
Right.
Maybe they travel for a while and then settle down. Maybe they find ways to incorporate travel into family life. The possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
It's really about that open communication, the flexibility, that commitment to finding solutions that work for both of you.
Okay, I'm feeling a lot better now. We've covered so much ground today.
I know we have.
As we wrap up, what are the, big takeaways you want listeners to walk away with?
Well, first and foremost, I want them to remember that the Matthew effect is not a life sentence. It's a challenge, but it's one that we can absolutely overcome with, awareness and effort.
Absolutely.
So start by understanding the root of the imbalance, right?
Huh.
Is it you? Is it your partner? A mix of both. And then from there, communicate your needs clearly, set those boundaries, and work together to create that shared vision for the future.
Beautiful.
Well-
Well, this has been our deep dive into the Matthew effects, complex stuff, but honestly, I feel empowered.
Me too.
It's not easy work, but we can absolutely shift those dynamics with awareness, with effort, and a whole lot of self-love.
I agree. And don't forget those resources out there.
Yes.
Therapists, books, support groups.
So many good things out there.
Exactly. They can help you build those stronger and healthier relationships.
So keep exploring these ideas, keep communicating, and remember, love has the power to transform not just your relationships, but your whole life.
That's so true.
And on that note, we'll catch you on the next deep dive. Until then, may your relationships be filled with balance, joy, and tons of mutual appreciation.